there. So good morning, everybody. It's great to have everyone here this morning, and thanks for taking the time to join us. It's a very sobering topic that we're going to discuss today, but really crucial for businesses, particularly during COVID, when a lot of businesses aren't occupied at the moment. So we really need to consider everything that we hear today from our two speakers. So we're joined by JP Kehoe. He's the General Manager at Skout Security for the EMEA region. So JP is going to speak to us about what you need to consider in terms of preventing cyber attacks. They've become more and more common. The people carrying out these attacks are probably becoming more and more clever and sophisticated, and the stories that you hear are heartbreaking. And in many cases, I spoke to a company last week, and 20 grand had been lost through a cyber attack. So JP is going to give us some tips and considerations to make sure that none of this awful stuff happens to us. Then we're also joined by Leo Harris. Leo is the CEO of Manguard Plus. They're a national security firm. I'll let Leo tell you a bit more about what they do. So again, to consider the physical side of security of your business, so your premises, your car parks and so on, particularly when the place is quiet, it's an opportunity for burglars and thieves to use this time to, maybe break into your premises and do untold damage. So thanks very much, guys, for joining us today. So I'm going to hand it over to JP, and he might just give us a bit of background to Skout. A lot of people have heard the name Skout and mightn't have heard you speak, so it's great to have you here today, and thanks very much.
Bernie, it's a pleasure. And yeah, lovely light topic for Tuesday morning, 9 o'clock, so we'll sort of hopefully make it informative in some way, Bernie. But thanks very much for having us, and thank everyone that's on the call for taking some time out of your day, because as I know, everyone is busy. I'm going to go off script a little bit, Bernie, because I didn't know Graham Kavanagh on the line. Graham, I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm looking forward to listening to Leo later. Leo's and a little bit about the company, but from my perspective, and I'll tell you a little bit about Skout in a second and all that piece, but the cybersecurity world and the physical security world are getting closer together, in terms of obviously, different approaches, but it's the same principles: protecting people and your business and protecting your data. Graham, from your side, because you're in this locality, I mean, what are you seeing, whether it's on the physical security side or the cybersecurity piece?
Graham, I think you could be on mute there. We can't hear you.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Thanks, JP. The main areas we're seeing businesses succumb to is invoice redirect fraud, and then quite a few potentially business owners, actually all business owners, succumbing to Bitcoin, getting defrauded with Bitcoin, or investing money in something that's not really there. It's not the Bitcoin arena that's the issue. It's the scammers are using the arena to defraud people.
Before you go, just for everyone else in the call that might know who you are and what your background.
Yeah. Sorry. So I suppose one thing I'll start with, I'm a member of the Guards. I'm a crime prevention officer, a cover leash and Offaly. We never present ourselves to be experts in any particular arena, but we kind of keep ourselves up to speed as best we can in arenas like this to be able to advise people. So really, a lot of the time we're engaging with victims, where really the arena I'm trying to get into is to be proactive and get the advice out to people to avoid you becoming a victim. But I do know people that think it's going to be, when it comes to the physical side, it's going to be alarms and CCTV and monitoring CCTV is the solution. A lot of the time you're trying to get people to change habits that they've formed, or to have proper staff training or proper protocols and procedures in place, say for particularly with a business, to avoid invoice redirect frauds, for example, because when you go digging, you'll find it's just been a lapse in a communication or a breakdown in communication that's led to it.
Yeah, that's perfect. No, Graham, thanks. I'm sorry, sort of called on you there. No, it's much appreciated, because you'll have a bird's eye view into what's going on. From our perspective, and when we look at the cybersecurity landscape, so we're a cybersecurity company. I run the business here in Europe. We're up and running 10 years now or whatever it is, but cybersecurity 10 years ago is much, it's seen much the same now in terms of it's seen as a difficult problem to solve that's expensive. So making it easy and affordable has always been our mission. But I think there's one thing that there's a real driver around what's happening within the landscape, and there's this lack of talent. You know, for the next 30 years, there's a huge shortage of cybersecurity talent out there. So that means for companies that are on this call, when you have a problem, there's a real difficulty in accessing that talent to let you know what to do, even reactively. So as Graham said, when things happen like business email compromise, so we'll walk through that in a second, what that means. But ultimately, even if you were to have a problem, it's really difficult to remediate. So the 20,000 that you're talking about, Bernie, you know, has a real impact for small to medium businesses. It's really critical. It's business critical. You could be out of your systems could be down for a length of time, and all of that piece, which is, you know, has a greater impact on an SME space as opposed to an enterprise company. So that lack of talent is one of the reasons. I'm going to share my screen here. It'll keep me honest a little bit. So that's one of the reasons there's, you know, cybersecurity is a hard problem to solve. And, you know, again, 4 million odd open cybersecurity positions today. So it's difficult for small to medium businesses to not only access that talent, but deal with incidents when they come up. And most common ones are, just as Graham said, things like phishing, business email compromise, you know, ransomware is another term that you might hear as well. But regulations are driving the need more and more as well, that you have to have a proactive stance on cybersecurity. So, you know, the threat landscape, and when you look at, people will resonate with this, I guess, as well. When you think of the cybersecurity landscape over a 20-year time horizon. So on top of this shortage of talent, the problem's not going away, because you look over the last 20 years, we've seen a massive increase in the number of devices out there, the data that's been created. In fact, in the last 3 years, there's been more data created since the beginning of time. So even, again, for small to medium businesses, there's more and more data being created, which is opening up that landscape and making it easier for bad actors to carry out these types of attacks. So there's more complexity to deal with when even trying to secure your environment. So Leo's going to talk about the physical security piece shortly, but from a cybersecurity perspective, that regardless of the size of your business, the attack surface has increased based on the growth of connected devices and data and all of that piece. So it's becoming more and more difficult, and certainly COVID has accelerated some of the aspects here. And you think about businesses moving to cloud-based services to help provide your services, and that's really opened up another element as well. So most businesses say they're too small to be attacked, but like, in fact, 65% of attacks happen to small to medium businesses. So because generally they don't have the same level of protection, and it makes for an easy target. So regardless of the size of your business, attacks are on the increase. We see it every day. We have a security operating center 24/7 that monitors this type of activity. Graham can testify to it. Bernie, you had a story yourself. So there's more and more of these attacks. So again, taking a proactive stance is certainly key. And you know what, not to bring COVID back into it, obviously, but you know, not having enough cybersecurity talent is like dealing with a pandemic without enough doctors and nurses. So you have to sort of have that mindset. You need all the help you can get. So the way we look at both the problem and the solution really summarizes into these sort of 5 points. And I think Leo, you might have a similar, just to tie it back to the physical security, a similar sort of methodology, I'm sure, as well. So when you think of, for the people on this call, when you think about your business, what you need to do now is start looking at, like, where is your data? Where is your critical data at the moment? So if, for example, it's that sales information or it's your HR information, you know, making sure you know where that data is. There's a lot of detail there behind it, but ultimately, like, where is it when it's at rest? Where is it right now? Where is it stored? And then as you move that around within your organization, or how is all of that done? Now, your IT company will obviously help you with that piece. And the second piece, which is the concept of building concentric rings of security. So what that really means is that it's often called the cyber kill chain. It's, you know, having a firewall or having endpoint protection is key, but just having one of those is not enough. You need to have a layered approach. And again, it's around protecting that data. Where we tend to come in, but again, it's maybe not for today, is that you need to know you have a problem, and visibility is key. We're monitoring that data. In Ireland, the average length of time from when something happens in your network and to when you know about it is 197 days. So it's like, it's a long time. So again, if Leo's clients or if, for example, in your home, if somebody's rambling around your home for like 100 and 200 days, you're going to want to know about it. It's a long time. So you have to know you have a problem. So bringing that response time down is key, and you know, makes a big difference. So where we see, for example, and when you think about business email compromise, one of the key things that happens typically is when your, for example, Office 365 account is compromised. So your email account, you'll normally log in from Portlaoise or Clonaslee or Stradbally, wherever you're based. But when those accounts are compromised, there are often logins from, you know, it's called impossible travel, where, for example, this morning I log in from Clonaslee and an hour later you're in Lagos in Nigeria or Russia or China. And these impossible logons are is where somebody is accessing your account because they've obviously got the credentials. Now that information is captured within your Office 365 environment, but nobody's looking at it. So when it happens, you don't notice that logon has happened. And that's why over that period of 200 days, the bad actors are monitoring that account. And just to walk through that a little bit further, when this is sort of an overview of an autonomy of an attack. So this is what bad actors would do in the case of, as Graham said, business email compromise. When you think about, in the middle here is all your critical data. This is what's important. And building the fence, the concentric rings of security, whether it's endpoint protection or you know, firewalls, authenticate. Your IT provider will be able to really ensure that is secure. But what's happening is the bad actors are sending emails into, for example, we'll take the example of Office 365. The email is sent in. Invariably, somebody is going to click on that link that is embedded within the email, and we have examples of that all the time. And the point here really is that these types of emails are becoming more sophisticated than ever before. So we'd all hear a couple of years back, it would be very obvious what that these emails are you know, they're jumping out, that maybe the way they're formatted and things like that is very obvious. It's not normal, but in these cases, they're very sophisticated email that are coming into your environment. So email protection is one element that I would suggest you speak to your IT provider, making sure email protection is in place. But when you follow that through and somebody is clicking on that link, invariably it's conducting something on your endpoint, your computer or your server. And again, endpoint protection is key. So it's email protection, endpoint protection. These are the key things you want to be looking at. When the attack is happening, the bad actor is going to move laterally, move around your network or your environment, and that can be in your office environment, or it could be within an application in the cloud. But it's going to call back out. It's called a command and control. So it gets this foothold within your environment and call back out to the bad actors, say, yep, we're in now, we're in such and such environment and we're going to stay here. It's called a slow and low approach. Going to stay as long as they can and gather intel, gather information about this environment. And again, it is so widespread that it doesn't necessarily know right now that, for example, you're a small business in Laois or you're a large institution in New York or London. It just knows that we're in this environment, looking around, and it's going to move laterally and find people who might have admin credentials, impersonating a user. They'll look to extract things of value within that organization, and then invariably found in nefarious places, whether it's dark web, or execute things like business email compromise, as Graham had mentioned. So that's sort of a little bit around the threat landscape. So really, lack of talent is driving this problem. The fact that there's more and more incidents happening, and just because you're a small business doesn't mean that you're in any way immune to it. It really means you have to take a proactive approach. So when you think about your critical data, making sure that you have it correctly, the security controls correctly configured, link with your IT company around that piece. But one of the key aspects, I think, and messages from our side, is that you have to know you have a problem. Visibility is key, monitoring is key on your environment. But there's probably two aspects, maybe just for this morning, Bernie, before I finish up. Yeah. I think one of the things everybody might think about today, when they talk to people, employees within the companies, or indeed with your customers, is just raise awareness. It's one of the key aspects and key controls we all have, is that we're all humans, and being able to raise awareness around these types of attacks happening. So when you go back this morning and speak to your people that work with you, is just have a conversation around cybersecurity. Make sure it's top of your mind, particularly as we all work from home. What we're seeing is that, as Graham talked about, business email compromise, one of the simple things we can all do as you receive an email that tells you to transfer what you think is a normal transfer or paying a bill, pick up the phone. Phone the person who sent you that email. Verify that you use common sense in those situations. Quite often they're out of the ordinary payment requests, or seem strange situations, or situations like that are often a sign of attempted wire fraud. So when you get those instructions, for example, to change banking details, make sure you pick up the phone. Make sure those that are working within your organization are prompted to do that. So put that control in place. So when you get any suspicious email, or indeed if you get any email to suggest changing a payment or changing payment timing, or the types of changes like that, double check, pick up the phone, make sure it's authentic, and that's the main thing. The other aspects, and we can send we have a little document that I'll send to Bernie, and Bernie will publish it afterwards. Things like checking the from field, double checking the email addresses and things like that. You may have seen some of that before, but we'll send it out afterwards. Be suspicious of confidentiality as well. It's another sign, or that watch for the sense of urgency. A major indicator of fraud is a sense of urgency. Where maybe Bernie and I get an email from Bernie, and she's, look, I'm stuck in a meeting, I need this paid because blah blah blah. Everything that indicates some sort of sense of urgency. If someone's been too pushy, trying to rush a transfer, stop, verify the request. So if there was one message today, I think raising awareness and have a heightened sense of urgency. I would frankly presume you already have a problem, because it's so pervasive now in the late part of 2020 and early part of this year. We've seen a tremendous increase, or 600% increase in business email compromise over that period of time. So presume you have a problem, raise awareness within your organization, and pick up the phone. They're free. You don't have, you know, it's not anything that's too complicated. But I think it's one of the major issues, and Graham might even speak to, like, as we investigate incidents, as we talk to people, you know, it's quite often those controls that we miss. So that's number one. I think number two, and you talk about the lack of talent, and you think a little bit more long term, make sure you have strong partnerships. So, you know, there, particularly within the chamber, there's very, very strong IT providers that will be able to help you on this journey. So knowing what good looks like is a problem for small to medium businesses. What that means is that, you know, when you look at your organization, and as it matures, and there's, as I said, there's more and more data, and you need to have a security posture that matures. So staying still is like going backwards in our world. So you have to be able to have a partner, an IT provider, that will help you in that journey, and that includes like training staff, changing those habits, but equally the controls that we talked about, building those security controls. So knowing what good looks like, quite often it's about getting the right IT provider that'll take you on that journey. So if, for example, you needed your endpoint protection to be upgraded in some way, or your email protection, things like that, they should be able to help you along the way and take that advice. So Bernie, that sort of, you know, summarizes some of the key things as we see it. Very happy if anyone wants to jump into the chat and put in a question or whatever. But Leo, from your side, I suppose it'd be good to maybe hand over to you as well and learn a little bit more around the physical security side of things.
Perfect. I'll work away. Thank you very much, JP. It was nice listening to you, and nice getting a background in relation to cybersecurity. I know it's on the increase. It's something that, as you rightly say, goes hand in hand with the physical security. So just to give a bit of background about myself before I kick in, I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Manguard Plus. We're a security company based in Kildare. We provide services nationwide and in the UK, and it's mainly around security, physical security solutions. So we've static guards, mobile patrols, key holding alarm response, and we have an EN 50518 command and control monitoring station located here in Kildare. So really what I want to do is just to back up what exactly you've been talking about, JP, in relation to some of the exposures that companies may have, and particularly around the lockdown period as well. But in general, security is on everyone's door at every moment and every time. So I'll just share my screen because I'm a very organized person. I like, yeah. So I think you can see my screen there. So really, it's just about the physical security awareness is what I'm going to talk about. And really, the first thing I want to talk about is, I'm not getting a move on that for some reason. But the first thing I want to talk about is context, because the context is what sets out what is required by people, particularly in relation to undertaking security in their organization. Now, when I say context, we have both internal and external context. So as a point of the internal context, it's important that organizations understand their internal context, what they do, what they operate, what their function is. The internal context constitutes the people, their environment, the equipment they're selling, the location where they are located, the type of building they're in, the type of facility they operate. You have to understand that, and you have the policies and procedures around understanding what it is you have in place and what you have there. In addition to that, you have to understand your external context. And as JP has rightly said, the external context involves a number of actors who have a potential to cause damage to your organization. But there are also other external actors or stakeholders that we have to engage with, such as authorities, the Health and Safety Authority, the Gardaí, private security companies, the PSA, whoever it is. So getting a full understanding of both internal and external context gives you the basis on which you can understand what type of measures you're going to need to take and how you're going to need to take them. It's not always easy to understand where you are when you're running a business, because it's not always easy to stop and look and take a critical overview or a helicopter view of your organization. But it is an exercise worth undertaking. It is important that if you have an overview of your organization, you can see where the vulnerabilities may lie. It's not always something that's quite obvious, but in buildings, you may have such vulnerabilities. And one of the big areas that we have to do, and there's 4 component parts to a security strategy. So if you implement a security strategy across your organization, you should encapsulate all of your activities, including your cybersecurity. And the first thing in the security strategy is your physical security. If you analyze your physical security to your location, where you have your vulnerable assets, so in one instance, it could be your data, it could be your finances, it could be stock, it could be critical information. So once you identify where you have your physical security, then you can prepare and implement measures to protect that. And they're the measures that Graham spoke about: the locks, the doors, the windows, the bars, and so on and so forth. So you have to understand how to implement them. The next aspect of it is your technical installations. And we all have some form of technical solutions now for security. So your technical solutions might be your access control, your gates, your alarms, your monitoring systems, your fire safety systems. They're all technical solutions that we have in our homes and we have in our workplaces. So you have to match the two in order to ensure that you have what technical solutions you have to provide the security. Then critical to it all is ensuring that you have correct procedures. And this is one point that JP made about procedures. You must have procedures for managing security exposure of your organization. Some of the procedures that you might like to have, you might like to have an opening up procedure in the morning and a lockdown procedure at night. 2 fundamental keys, because they are 2 points of critical interaction with the external world. When you open up in the morning, you have to ensure that you have everything in place. You open up, you on alarm, you check your building, and everything is in order. And the same in reverse at night time when you're locking down. Procedures then for people accessing and egressing your buildings and your locations, particularly now when we're talking about the likes of COVID. So COVID-19 has brought about now where we're all signing in and out of buildings. But again, as a business owner, you have to understand that we also have an exposure under GDPR, and we have a legal obligation to manage data and private data of personnel. So we must understand how we're going to access that data, retain it, and how we're going to use it, what we're going to use it for, and how we're going to dispose of it. So the procedural aspect of it can become quite cumbersome because, unfortunately or unfortunately, we are in a very compliant type of an environment where we have a lot of compliance issues that, and depending on the sector you're operating in, will depend on how compliant you need to be or what your compliance area will be. But procedures are very important. And once you have your procedures in place, then you must follow on with what we call a response. And this is one of the critical factors that organizations fail to do, both internal and external. Again, we heard JP mention about, cybersecurity and people being in your system, staying in your system for quite a long time before you identify it. It's not uncommon for people to have issues in their workplace, and they're what we call, red flags. Small issues appear, things happen. We brush them under the carpet, we don't deal with them, we don't tackle them face on or head on, and we allow them to develop and move on. And these can manifest themselves into issues later on down the road. So response internally is very important. You need to implement a strong security culture. You need to then also ensure that you provide training. So it's not really sufficient for you to know it. It's probably best that if you get some form of security training, you can provide it yourself in-house. I mean, it's just a matter of developing your procedures, developing your policies, talking them through with the staff, talking them through with your service providers, and then implementing them. And implementing them through training with your staff and talking to them and telling them what's expected of them from a security point of view. And once you have that in place, you're able to deter any criminals. And really, when we're talking about activity in criminality and criminal activity, we generally break this down into 2 types of criminals. You have opportunistic criminals and you have organized criminals. So opportunistic criminals generally are people who will, and we see them around your estate, a car, a van drives in around the estate. You're not sure who they are, they're not from there. They could be out doing a scoping exercise and looking to see what's available. Opportunistic criminals are constantly on the move. They're constantly moving around, looking at things. They're constantly looking for breaches in security. They're constantly looking where people fall down and don't follow the procedures. And it's no different to what was already been said about the cybersecurity. People are a vulnerability within organizations. And if the back gate isn't opened, or it is left open, if doors and windows are left open, equipment is left outside unattended, cars with keys in them, windows open, slipping out to the shops, these are all vulnerabilities that are exposed and exploited by the opportunistic criminals. And they happen on an everyday basis. That's why you always hear the story of she only left for a few minutes and came back and her television was gone, or they were only gone 10 minutes and they came back and the screen was gone. It's not really unusual. It's because the opportunistic criminal avails of those opportunities. That's their job and that's what they do. On the other side, then you have organized criminals. Organized criminals are more determined. They will rehearse, they will practice, they will carry out reconnaissance, and they undertake activities. And again, a lot of the time we feel we may not be big enough or large enough to be targeted by organised criminals. And that is quite possible. But you may have or be in possession of something that the criminals want in order for them to gain leverage on somebody else. Or as we had years ago, the tiger kidnapping type scenario. So you need to be very mindful of it. And you do need to be mindful of people and places who are out of people or vehicles or situations who are out of place and don't feel comfortable. Why is the car parked outside the house? Why is that car parked in the driveway? Why is he outside my buildings? I seen that guy earlier. And there are, organised criminals will undertake reconnaissance before undertaking any major activities. So that's one of the key giveaways of them. We always feel that the organised criminals are kind of the area of the Gardaí, and they are. The Gardaí are the ones that will deal with them. But it's up to each of us to play our part in identification of potential threats posed by organised crime. And organised criminality can be everything. It can feed in from a lower end, such as on the street drug trading, selling of illicit material. All these areas fill into organised crime. So it builds up from a low base. So we need to be mindful of where we stand in relation to that and how we deal with that. But the one sure area around it all is that the response element needs to be in place. Once we have a response element and once we identify something untoward, or in the event of an alarm activation on our premises at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, yes, we will get an alarm activation. Yes, the Gardaí will be called. Now, we heard, Graham, the Gardaí have a lot of area to cover and a lot of premises and a lot of buildings and a lot of population to manage. So we have to play our part in it as well. And that's where we in Manguard Plus kind of step into that kind of centre void. In the event of an alarm activation, we obviously have the monitoring station. So the monitoring station will pick up an alarm activation and will send the vehicle to the location straight away. That is a critical factor now that supports not only ourselves and the Gardaí. We also have a direct link into the Gardaí control centre so that if there is a situation occurring that requires assistance, our controllers monitor or contact them directly and they get an immediate response. But your first response and your first line of defence is to have somebody to respond. Now, a lot of companies will do that themselves, and that's absolutely perfectly okay. There's no issue with it. And they're what's known as key holders. So if you have a premises and you're a key holder, the alarm goes off, you get a call, and you get up and go to your premises. You may not want to go to the premises that late at night again on your own. So that's another area that you need to be mindful of, and you need to plan in advance as to how you're going to do that and how you're going to arrive there and go there. And again, Manguard, that's what we do in the Laois area. We provide vehicles to support people, either, as a support to people going to open up or lock up their premises, or we do it for them. And they're the kind of key areas in which you need to manage and plan through procedures and policies and through identifying what exactly your exposure is. Because when we're looking at the exposures for organizations, one of the key factors you have to ask yourself is, what assets do I actually have? What assets am I protecting? Because a lot of organizations will spend a lot of money on assets that are not really valuable, and they may overspend on security, and the valuables aren't that valuable, or underspend on security, and then they're exposed. So we need to understand what your assets are and what you're trying to protect. Then, the threats that come from the criminals, the organized, opportunistic criminal and the organized criminals, what exactly is their capability to do or undertake the activity that you have that may cause you some damage, and how are you going to mitigate against that? They're the type of areas that we like to see people looking at. And the intent of criminals. The intent of an opportunistic criminal is far less than the intent of an organised criminal. An opportunistic criminal, if he won't get in the first couple of minutes, well, then he'll go away. He will not stay to continue to try and breach security protocols or security procedures. Opportunistic criminals are what they are, opportunistics. So if they see an opportunity, they will go in. If they don't, they'll go away. So one of the areas that we need to look at as well, or how we kind of package that whole defense of that, is we do what's known as deter, detect, delay, respond, and recover. So deter is we try and deter people from coming to our premises. So we have locks on our gates, we have locks on our doors, we have CCTV cameras in place, we have sufficient lighting, we have an open area, and we have signage. And that way, the criminal will come and look and go, they're organised, I'm not going to bother with them. The next one is we have to detect. If somebody does have a go at your premises, so if they do try and get in the back door, if they do try and get in a window, we're able to detect them. And that detection is generally through an alarm or CCTV with motion detection. Once we can detect them, then we can delay them. And the delay is in the physical infrastructure that you have in place, your doors, your windows, your alarms. And the response then kicks in, and we respond with either ourselves or the Gardaí or a key holder to the premises. Once you have that response element coming in, then you analyze the situation and recover. And it's very, very effective. So again, you know, the more procedures you put in place, the more visually unappealing it becomes to the opportunistic criminal. The organised criminal is much the same, except for the fact that we need to manage people so that when we see them, or we see them hanging around, we then report that to Manguard and you say exactly what you see, and they will deal with it. And the Gardaí are the ones that are obviously the forefront. We are a support mechanism, and we continue to do that throughout the country. So we do have, as Graham has, or as JP also said, we do have a security handbook. It's just a security awareness handbook, and that is available on our website. And if anybody wishes, you can go on the website. It's www.manguardplus.ie. Bernie will give it to you, and it's under the news and events section. And there's a little handbook there, and it's generally around. We devised that handbook for Christmas, around managing protecting your home. But the one thing is, if people manage the security of their home effectively, they can then bring that into their workplace and manage the workplace effectively as well. So they go hand in hand. It's not just one or the other. And again, it comes all back down to the four elements of a coherent security strategy, which are the physical, technical, procedural, and response elements. And it's how you implement them, it's how you manage your security going forward. Is that okay, Bernie?
That's great. Thanks very much for that, Leo. Really informative, both presentations. And I think the message here is to be proactive in your security, whether it's your physical or your online. Don't wait to have to call the guards. You know, consider everything that was mentioned here. There was one part of JP's presentation that jumped out at me. It was 2 words on the bottom right hand page: cyber Armageddon. And I'm going, oh my God, that just doesn't sound like a good scenario. JP, your presentation was really eye-opening, and from my point of view, wasn't overly familiar with the whole world of cybersecurity and how somebody does infiltrate and could sit in your system for 200 days is quite incredible. So that's really really informative, and I hope everyone got something from this today. There's a couple of questions there. I'm not sure if they were answered there. John Hayes had a question there for JP. JP, would you like to
I'll kind of open back with John there directly on that.
Oh, Grant, okay.
Yeah, I think Bernie in general and Leo, that's marvelous to hear as well about your approach to everything. But in general, yeah, unfortunately, and it does get it. To be honest with you, it does get a little giggle sometimes, Cyber Armageddon. But it is for this year. I truly believe that's where we're going. It's already started at the tail end of last year. It's really important that as a business you take a proactive approach. Do the simple things, basic cybersecurity hygiene, basic controls, as Leo probably talked about on the physical security side, but I can only speak on the cyber. take a proactive approach, you know, as leaders within your own business, making sure that you have conversations with your staff, your customers, your suppliers, raise that awareness. And I think the second part is making sure you have a partner. You know, and most of you probably have an IT provider or service provider. You know, get engaged, making sure that you're taking their advice around the cyber posture that you need to follow. And yeah, sorry, yeah, that's.
I'm just interested in that question that John asked, because we use Canva as well. Is that a risk?
Look, I'm just over back with John. I wasn't aware of it. I think
Okay.
in general with software as a service applications,
Yeah.
with any applications, again, you'll hear things like two-factor authentication.
Yeah.
I see even with WhatsApp now,
Yeah.
they've enabled two-factor authentication. The reason people don't use it, it's awkward. It makes it more difficult. And it's going back to habits. So changing your habit, whether it again is picking up a phone to speak to your, you know, somebody sending you an invoice, whether it's changing the controls and have two-factor enabled, whether it's on the phone or an application that you use. Yeah. So these applications, they're continuously evolving as well. So software companies have security controls built in. So making sure you leverage those. If you don't know, ask the question, ask the person who is your vendor, supplier, or your IT, making sure it's configured correctly, and things like two-factor is enabled. But again, you know, I think really when you step back a little bit, quite often with application security, while you're looking at the controls for that application, it's over here when you look at business email compromise that can, again, invariably bring you back into wherever that critical data is. So I think having a you know, visibility across all of your systems is key. And yeah, please God, everyone is doing that. Mm-hmm.
That's great. Thanks very much for that. And I do I see Sally put up a comment there that where the Manguard Plus handbook can be downloaded on their website, and hopefully the market for you will grow in Laois, Leo, and we look forward to working with you in the future. I think Gray might have something to add there.
I suppose positive messages instead of worrying people. But really, one thing we're trying to get people to do is to take a walk about outside their premises on a regular enough basis. What's left lying around outside that can make your premises easily accessible from the outside? Are lights broken? Are cameras moved? Because you'll find when something happens and you go looking, they've actually been around your premises. So I would even go as far as suggesting a weekly walk or walkabout outside to check is there issues. The alarms, because one thing I saw business there over the weekend, 3 alarm activations over the weekend. So either there's a fault with the alarm or the premises is being scoped for a potential break-in. So I've spoken to the business owner about that to get it checked. Staff training is crucial. So everything I see when it comes to businesses, when there's an issue, it's down to maybe a young lad or a young one in a shop just not having the confidence, or just nobody's actually told them this is what you do in certain situations. It's crucial. And you can do that yourself. And there's any amount of information out there about pointing them in the right direction for scams or what to do if there's a robbery in the shop. And the last thing, is your security system suitable for what your premise is? So have you got a domestic alarm system on a commercial property? What's the polling, for example, Leo, what's the polling on your alarm? Is it going to be an hour and a half before somebody finds out, or is it going to be a minute before somebody finds out the alarm is going off? And if there's problems with your alarm, you need to get out and respond to it. The cheapest thing you could do, and people don't like this, but the cheapest thing you could do if there's an issue with your alarm at 2 o'clock in the morning is to stay at your premises till opening, till daylight, rather than walking away and then finding that they were just casing the place out, or calling the lads at Manguard and getting somebody at static security, instead of coming in the next morning and find out they came in through the roof. And that's something we see, unfortunately, a bit too often.
Okay, thanks very much for that, and really appreciate everyone taking the time to log on today, and particularly to Leo and JP for their insight and their expertise in this area. I'm sure both wouldn't mind if anyone had further questions that they could be contacted to help you out. And this I was going to say episode. This event has been recorded and will be put out on across our social media and on a newsletter. And again, if you need to make any contact with anyone, please drop me an email after this. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Leo. Thanks, JP.
Thanks, Kieran.